Hey everybody, Lewis here, Status Coup. We are in East Palestine, Ohio for our 5th reporting trip. Happy to be here with Candace DeSanzo again. Candace, good to see you again. Thanks for taking the time.
Of course.
So it's been a couple months since we saw you last. The last time we saw you, you were still temporarily relocated. We're now actually back in your home. I'm curious to kind of, and I remember, the last time we were here, that was sort of the end of that time. You were getting ready to move back at that point. What has it been like since the relocation ending and actually moving in back into your home in East Palestine?
When we first came back home, all of us got sick all over again. I called the EPA numerous times. They came to my house. I had one bag of shoes that I had saved, which I had filled up a 15-foot dumpster full of other stuff that smelled the same way. And, the EPA admitted to smelling chemicals in this bag of shoes that I had saved, for my boys. And all this stuff seemed to be in like one corner of my basement. And when I first came home, I had the house cleaned and I thought, it might be okay. Well, as I started...
Right, wanting it, yes. You want to go back home eventually. That's the
yes.
goal, right, yeah.
Well, as I started to open cupboards and dig between items, I was getting blasted with chemicals left and right. I went to go lay in my bed and I kind of like plopped on my bed and right up my face, that blast of chemicals. So, I just started throwing everything away. I begged the EPA for help. Their suggestion was for me to open my windows up and air my house out. They refused to give me testing. And I had come to the decision that it was an off-gassing from a pipe in my basement. Because in the first room of my basement was the heaviest concentration. I could walk from upstairs to downstairs. And like I said, when I first came home, to me, it was these smells were a lot more noticeable. I'm not saying I still don't have days where it's like raining, I'll smell chemicals. And what I did was I ended up, after I knew the EPA wasn't going to help me, I didn't want to do this. But I capped that drain pipe off. I wanted it as proof. But it got to the point where I was like, no, I got to do something here. Has it gotten better? Maybe better within the home, but there's still something going on outside too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we've spoken to quite a few people today, and I'm hearing, you mentioned when it rains and that sort of thing. People are still getting chemical smells in the air. We just talked with Dr. Chai, who he was saying that the like almost smelling like paint thinner type smells and other chemical smells in the air. And he's like, it's not like I'm just driving around looking for things to smell. It's like I'm going about my everyday life, and then you get out of the car, and it like hits you like a wall, and you're just...
Well, like, what will be so crazy is I'll be like, I feel like they're doing something, or something's going on, because it'll be like 3 or 4 days where you don't really have any symptoms, and I'll start to get like itchy in between my eyes. My kids haven't had bloody noses for the last couple months, but I all of a sudden have started to get bloody noses. Never have had a bloody nose in my life. I've had a sore throat for, the last 3 months, if I even scream, because I'm a mom of 5 boys, so I lose my voice, and it's scary, because I don't know if something's wrong, and I don't even know if I want to go and find out. But something is definitely going on, and then you'll go on Facebook and people will be like, is anybody else having symptoms? It's like all these people, it's not coincidental that we're like, oh yeah, all our skin's itching on this day, or everybody's got a sore throat this day, and it's just, it's not clean up.
Right. And it's what's been driving me nuts, and we've talked about this before, and I'm just kind of like keep hammering this point, is that like people have been getting sick in big enough numbers that like there should be red flags going up. You know what I mean? Is it everybody? No, but it's a number of people that it should be sounding some sort of alarm. And the entire time throughout this whole thing, the EPA has basically done test after test after test and said, hey, yep, that's acceptable. Everything's fine. Residents got sick all throughout that. Members of the CDC got sick all throughout that in the beginning, to the point where CNN did a whole piece on it, that the CDC members came into town and they had to leave because they were getting sick. And here we are. It's been literally, it'll be an entire year since this started in another 2 days from now. And you all are still having to deal with this sort of stuff. But, you know, it's been interesting this trip because, you know, we're actually, the relocation is kind of ending for most folks. And we're now, like, back in people's homes and hearing the different, you know, stories of what's going on in each of them. So it's definitely been eye-opening to kind of see the changes. I'm curious, though, just yesterday, we got the news that President Biden, who was notably absent from the entire beginning of this crisis, there were a lot of calls for him to come visit in the early days of this. He's just announced that he's going to be coming sometime in February, maybe Saturday, maybe some other day. We don't really know. What's your initial reaction to hearing that?
It's pointless. Why are you going to come now? We know why he's coming, because there's an upcoming election. And in last election, 75% of Columbiana County voted for Donald Trump. We know why you're coming. But I don't think he's going to have a very warm welcome here in EP. I mean, if I could do anything, I'd go down there to turn my back to him, just like he turned his back on this entire town. You know, it's been a year. The damage is done. This town is forever changed, forever traumatized, and it's forever ruined.
Right. And what's frustrating is, like, there was an opportunity for him to come a month after the derailment, even 2 months after the derailment, to kind of check in and be like, let's see I want to see myself what's actually going on.
Because it's not about the people. If he cared about the people of this town and what we were facing and what we still face today, he would have been here. Maybe not day one, but at an appropriate time after that. It's been a year. Why even waste your time to come? And another thing I heard today, it is a 45-minute flight from Washington to Cleveland. So you mean to tell me while you're at Camp David, while you're laying on the beach, you never had 45 minutes in your busy schedule to come here?
Right.
It's pointless. What help is he going to offer?
Right. No, I mean, it is frustrating. I mean, if I'm looking at it from, like, the most optimistic lens, like, you know, if he were to come here and meet with actual residents who are affected, not a hand-selected group who are going to say the exact right things, that would be one thing, because maybe he would come and be like, holy shit, like, it sounds like this was a catastrophe and was handled poorly, and my administration and the agencies that fall under the control of the federal government, which President Biden is the leader of, the people around him are probably doing more than he is these days.
Yes.
Anyway, that kind of falls under his leadership, that all of these issues, with whether it be the EPA, whether it be I mean, we're talking state now too, state EPA, the NTSB. We got some hearings from the Department of Transportation, agency after agency after agency that has had issue after issue after issue in dealing with this response, which has been obviously unacceptable.
Well, we have been failed at every level. Every level of this, we have been failed, and they continue to fail us. And I mean, I don't know what they think Biden coming here to do a photo op is going to help the suffering, the continued suffering that's going on here. You know, your job as our president was to take action. We should have been protected. Right. So to make a trip here now, it means absolutely nothing to me. Right. And I know that me, ordinary me, just a resident of this town who has suffered tremendously, and I'm sure my family, I have a big family, has lost multiple years off of their life, because I do not believe that it is safe here whatsoever. Our bodies tell us that. Right. And, you know, it's just, I lost track where I was going with that.
No, yeah, it's outrageous, though. I kind of want to ask you, we've talked about this a little bit before in the past, but I would have figured at this point in time something would be done on this. Back at that NTSB hearing in June, the owner of the actual cars carrying the vinyl chloride, oxyvinyl, testified at this hearing saying that they advised Norfolk Southern 3 times that they did not need to detonate those cars and have the initially what it was called the controlled burn, which we all know was explosion of these chemical cars because it was the most expedient way to get the tracks open again, that there's really been no one held accountable for that. Sure, Norfolk Southern is paying some fines and whatnot. They're paying money out where they absolutely should be, but that decision has ruined so many people's lives, whether it be the health effects that you've been dealing with now or the potential health effects, which are much scarier.
Well, sooner or later, it's
going
to do more than ruin people's lives. Lives will be taken over that decision. And I think it'll be many lives. And, you know, the sad thing is Unified Command is the one that made that decision. But as it was said before this NTSB hearing, the trigger man was our fire chief. A little town fire chief that made that decision. And you don't think that was all part of the plan when they knew that the company that owned the vinyl chloride said do not detonate it. We all know why they did it. They had to get those tracks rebuilt. I live right here, and I'll tell you what, I was up all night because I was a nervous wreck. And I believe, I tried to go back and look on my doorbell. I think it was 5:45 a.m. when the first starts of trucks rolling in, and they had railroad ties on them. And I'm like, railroad ties already? The fire's still blazing. I can see it, you know what I mean, from over the treetops. And it was, that's exactly what it was. And it was semi after semi, because it was more important to get them railroad tracks up and running. They put profit over people, and every single person that was here, government agencies, went along with whatever Norfolk Southern did. They even let them build those tracks and stood by. You know, Biden says they were here 2 hours. What did they do in those 2 hours after it happened? They let them build the tracks over contaminated dirt, and they waited so long because you remember, but it was months in when they had started the cleanup, and then we found out that they were just going to clean the burn pits, and we were like, "What? You're just cleaning them now? Why have you let them sit there for all those months?" Yeah, no, it's absolutely insane. And again, yeah, sure, you were here for 2 hours after it happened. Like, why then did 3 days later you tell everybody in this town, including you, that, oh yeah, it's totally fine to go home, nothing to worry about, safe? You know, there's an approach there where you could have been like, hey, like, our initial readings are saying, you know, there's nothing that you're going to drop dead from immediately right now. You can go back and get a couple things, this or that, go back, but at your own risk, because we don't really know. If you went out and said that, okay, that feels like a reasonable thing to say, not it is safe to return home, our test results all came back fine. And that is what happened, and essentially the 4,500 people in this town and folks over the line in Pennsylvania where this plume went were given terrible information. Well, like for me, I came home before I even had my house tested, because by the time you could get an appointment, and we didn't know if our hotels were going to be paid for or what, we didn't have the means to stay gone any longer. So, you know, we came home, I think it was probably 12 to 14 hours before our home got tested. And here, like fools, they came in here with their little beep machines that we thought was going to make sure that this house was safe for the lives of our children. And to come to find out, they didn't even know if it was safe.
And even in that, I remember this was early days. I mean, you gave us the video that you took during that meeting when they came and did the testing in here the first time. First off, like, those tests are basically meaningless because we now know that the devices that they were using are nowhere near sensitive enough to pick up the chemicals of concern here, and they don't even pick up some of the chemicals of concern here.
And it makes me absolutely sick because I put my children's lives in that test.
And here we sit literally a year later, and there's been no apologies. These folks have been stuck dealing with Norfolk Southern, the people that caused all these problems. They've been stuck dealing with them to get any sort of assistance. The federal government has, I mean...
Well, because those are the only tests that anybody here has ever gotten in their home. Those tests, the 2 days after, you know, they did the controlled burn. It wasn't a controlled burn, but since then we have all fought to have testing on our soil, water, our air. And, you know, I always was curious. You know, if we lived somewhere in Georgia and it was, you know, a little lady that called and said, I smell gas in my house. I smell chemicals in my house. Does the EPA go there and do some kind of test, give them some reassurance? I mean, when it's one person? Or, I mean, are people even at that level failed? You know, I often wonder what goes on, because I just can't believe of a town of 4,500 people that you guys, with your budget, don't have the ability to appease the, half of us that are nuts and sick, just, if it's not everybody, well, why can't you make the people that want it right that way, make it right for us?
Right. No, and there are like real solutions that could be done that Norfolk Southern can 100% pay for, that the federal government should deal with, so that you don't need to negotiate with Norfolk Southern over this. The federal government should just be, if people want to get out, we'll help you do so. We'll get the money from Norfolk Southern later, so that you don't need to be dealing directly with the people who harmed you all during this. It's like going to your attacker after you know what I mean? And like, it's insane. It's insane.
No doubt. And I've said that from the beginning.
Yeah.
We're having to go to the exact people that caused this, and it was not pleasant. That's one of the things that forced me back early too. Plus, they weren't offering online schooling anymore. I couldn't find a permanent place to live. What was I going to do?
Right.
Enroll my kid at a school and then 3 weeks later enroll him in a different school?
They basically like played a waiting game of like, let's just wait these people out.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to break them down slowly over time, we're going to make it so that they can get the assistance, but only if they jump through hoop after hoop after hoop. We're going to make them feel terrible about it. We're going to make their kids have to do online schooling or consider pulling them out of school. And thing after thing after thing builds up to a point where it's just like, you can only do so much.
Yeah, so I always said I felt forced to come back home. Was I forced? No, but my hand was forced.
Right.
Because I wasn't given any viable options to survive with my family outside of this home.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is we should want to run to our home. And I didn't. I wanted to run away from it, and I still don't want to be here. I'm trying to find a way out. I want to go back to school because I'm going to have to do this the hard way. Get to a point in life where I'm making the kind of money that I can sell this home and buy a home somewhere else that is the same thing. Probably
that's
for
the goal.
twice.
Is you want to be able to sell this and get out. But
like I said, hey, a year or two of exposure is a lot better than 30 years. I mean, so as soon as I can save my own family, I will, because you know what I've come to learn? No one's going to come save me.
I mean, that is, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But at the same time, that is so frustrating that you all are now in a position, you got 5 kids, and you want to be able to leave. You're going to sell your house, have to go do it somewhere, move to another place. This is not your fault. And you're just having to put yourself through this for 2 years, expose yourself potentially to God knows what for 2 years, before being able to do that is so frustrating when we live in this great country where we take care of our own.
It's not even my house I lose. It's my community.
Right.
It's what I used to have here before that train derailed on February 3rd a year ago.
Yeah.
And it will never be the same again. And, there's at times I don't even realize the trauma that I've experienced. And today I was actually watching an old video, and it was of the controlled burn.
Yeah.
And I found myself with tears streaming down my face.
Yeah.
Because I think I take it day by day. And when I look at something like that, it hits me as a whole. And when I realize how much this has really impacted my life, it's nuts.
Right.
It's nuts. My life has been ripped from me. And people that I pay taxes to protect me, the way that you think America works, it doesn't. And I become hopeless many times. But I'll never give up the fight, because, even if I die of cancer or something bad does happen, I hope that all my kids know that I fought. I continue to fight for what was right, because what has gone on here sure as hell ain't right.
Right. I thank you so much for taking the time and continuing to take the time. I remember the first time we met was in the parking lot behind the municipal building over there.
I had no makeup on. Yeah. I didn't want to do it.
Yeah. Jamie talked you into it, and I'm glad she did, because that was an emotional interview. And I mean, that was the first full day. You were heated.
My kids were bleeding out of their mouth. I wanted to know what was going on.
You almost had me in tears there. And I mean, it is so frustrating, though, the fact that you want to leave, you don't have the resources to leave right now, and again, it's not your fault, and you're just stuck here.
You know what's sad about that interview?
What?
Is I said in that interview, here we are 3 weeks later, and we're in the same place we were day one. Well, here we are almost a year later, and I'm in the same place I was day one.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good spot to end it. Candace,
Me too.
Seriously, thank you so much for taking the time
Always.
for staying in touch with us over the last year.
You're
So,
awesome.
yeah.
You guys know I love Status Coup. You guys support them. They're great. They do real news here, and we become great friends. And I thank you for everything you've done for the town.
Awesome. Thanks, Candace.
Awesome. Thanks.